Hi there, I'm Michelle the Painter from Berkshire Paint and Sip, and this is Paint and Sip at Home. Alright, so today I'm going to be painting Ocean Beach Chair, and I'm going to be sipping on a little green tea here. And if you enjoy this process, I do hope that you like and subscribe to my channel, and that you also check out my Patreon page where you're going to find additional painting perks. So let's get painting and let's get sipping. Alright, so for my materials today, I'm going to be using a stretched and primed 16 by 20 inch canvas. If you're painting along with me, you can certainly switch up the size, but that's what I'll be using. I'm going to be using acrylic paint today. My colors are titanium white, cobalt blue, fluorescent pink, chrome yellow, green oxide, Mars black, and burnt umber, which I'll refer to as brown. And of course you can switch those up if you'd like to. For my tools today, I have a 1/2 inch wide flat bristle brush. I have a number 10 round synthetic brush, and I have a number 4 round synthetic brush, and I will refer to these as small, medium, and large as we go through the painting process. And of course you can switch those up as well if you'd like to. If you're painting along with me, you'll probably want to have a cup of water for washing your brushes, as well as a paper towel for drying your brushes. And down below this video, I will be providing you with a couple of additional resources that can help you through your painting process. One of them is a link where you can purchase the same exact paint kit that I'm using, from the large canvas to the same kind of paint and all the good stuff in between. So that's there for you. There's also a link where you can download a free image of the final painting. So you can print that and use it as visual reference as you go through the painting process. And there's also written step-by-step instructions down there for you as well. And that's all we're going to need today. Alright, so what we're going to do for the first step is we're painting our sky. I'm going to be using my big brush for this step. I will be using blue, pink, yellow, and white. And how I'm going to do this is I'm going to be painting it with kind of a left to right crisscross type of brush stroke. I'm not going to be worried about putting my bright sun in right now. We'll do that later. So just know as you go through this process, you don't need to put your sun in place. I'm going to bring my sky down about 1/4 of the way. So I'm going to put a couple of little markers in there. So I'm going to put blue and white on my brush at the same time. Not much blue, just a little bit of blue and a little bit of white. I'm going to eyeball about halfway down my canvas, and then I'm going to go about halfway between there and the top of my canvas and make myself a little bit of a marker. Then I use my brush as a measuring tool to see how far down I came. I'm going to go over to the right hand side, and I'm going to make myself a mark at about the same height. So now I've got a stopping point for my sky. It doesn't have to be perfect when you do, you don't have to have a perfect horizon line when you do the sky. We'll do that when we do the water, but you want to at least come down to here. So I have the blue and the white on my brush. I'm going to start up in the top with my blue and white, and you can have this go as light or as dark as you want to. It's going to be a visual preference on your part, and I'm using this long kind of crisscross type of motion. So what'll end up happening is it'll look like there's some dusty kind of clouds floating by. It's the only time I'm going to pick up blue. I'm not going to wash my brush. The next color I'm going to go into is pink and white. So that way, whatever blue is on my brush, when it mixes with pink, you're going to have a pretty purple that happens in your sky. So I'm picking up a little bit of pink and a little bit of white with the blue that's on my brush, and this blends into this really pretty sunsetty kind of purple in your sky. And I'm going to continue to pick up some pink and white as I go over towards this right hand side. And what is also happening is the blue is working its way off of my brush as I'm going through this kind of blending process with the pink on my brush. And so when I go into the yellow, which I'm about to go into in a minute, I won't necessarily have a dramatically green sky with blue and yellow on my brush. So what I'm going to do for the next pickup of paint is I'm going to pick up a little pink, a little yellow, and a little bit of white. So it might turn a little peachy or orangey as I'm transitioning down into that bright area of the sky down at the bottom. I'm picking up a little bit more pink just to make sure that this has some really vibrant sunsetty colors in it. And then once I've got this on here, I'm going to only pick up white after this, and it's going to make for a nice dramatic sky. So when we do go to put, and I make sure I come all the way down to my marker, when we do go to put the sun on there later, we'll have this beautiful drama behind it that is going to allow the sun to really pop out. So the darker your sky is with these sunsetty colors, the more you're going to see that sun as it is going down into the horizon. And then you can kind of just keep blending these, making them kind of look like they're wispy into each other. You can even get them to overlap that blue a little bit. That's going to help you to make it look really nice and natural. And then once you've got your sky as beautiful as you want, you can take that large brush. We're going to use it for the next step. So you'll want to wash it and dry it and get ready for the next step. All right, so what we're going to do for the next step is we're painting our water. I'm going to be using my large brush. The colors I'm using are brown, blue, and white. And how I'm going to do this is I'm going to have my water really pretty dark at the top, and then it's going to come down much lighter as it's creeping its way towards the beach area. I'm going to have my my water coming down about halfway down my canvas, so about another quarter of the way. And again, if you want to mark it, I'm just going to pick up a tiny bit of blue and give myself a little bit of a marker somewhere about halfway down my canvas. And if it's not perfect, it doesn't matter because it's going to meet the land anyways. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to pick up blue and brown on my brush at the same time, kind of equal parts of both. And I'm going to be creating myself a horizon line. As we do this, you may run into wet paint from your sky. Don't worry about that. Just paint it right in and it's going to look super natural. It'll look really pretty and it'll look like it all works together. So I can see that I've brought all of my sky down past these two markers and I can still see those markers. But if you've lost your markers and can't see them, or if your sky is up a little bit higher in spots, you might need to remark your sides. But I can see mine and I feel like they're in a good spot here. So what I'm going to do with my blue and my brown on my brush is I'm going to draw a line from one dot to the next. When I'm doing this, I'm going to be kind of pushing my brush into my canvas so it creates a pretty clean line at the top. And I'm always going to be keeping my eye on the prize, which is the next dot. That way it will, while I'm looking here, it's going to kind of guide my hand straight to it. If you sit and you watch your brush, you're going to do this with your brush. So just keep your eye on the prize and that will guide your hand into it. So again, blue and brown on my brush. I'm going to start over on the right hand side and I might switch halfway through and just to get them connected, but I'm always going to keep my eye on the prize. And even if you run out of paint along the way, it's okay. You can always reload. Like I'm going to go ahead and reload right now. And if you wanted to, you could start over on that left hand side. And right now my prize is that center mark right now. And then once you've got it on here, it probably is not going to be perfect, but you can certainly sit here and fiddle with it. So once it's there, you can just kind of sit and fiddle with it all you want. Again, it doesn't have to be super perfect. We do have some elements to the painting that are going to add some distraction, like a chair and some flowers. So if it doesn't turn out perfect, it's okay. Excuse me. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to paint in the top of my water with this blue and brown. So it's really nice and dark up at the top. And once I've got a good solid coat up in through here, and if you're using a bristle brush like I am, you'll probably notice some streakiness to it, which I love in the water because that to me just makes it look more natural and organic. So if you like the streakiness, great. If not, you might want to do a couple of coats. Now that I've got that on there, I'm going to start picking up a little bit of white. And you don't even need to wash your brush. If you've got a good amount of paint on your brush, what will happen is it will gradually get lighter and lighter as it comes down towards the where the beach is going to be. because the remnants of the brown and the blue are working their way off of your brush at this point. And I'm using a pretty similar stroke to what I did up in the sky, only I'm not giving it as much movement as I did in the sky. And what I like to do is I put the paint on and then I travel back up into that previous section, and that helps me to get it nice and blended. And even if you have to go, you know, pretty far up top just to get it to blend as much as you want, so be it. And then once you get down to where your markers are, you want to make this line messy. You don't need it to be a clean line. So I just kept picking up some white, and now I'm just kind of getting this to be a really messy line as it's going to be transitioning into my beach. And then we will be using the same brush for the next step. So once you've got your water on here and you've tweaked it as much as you want to, you can take this brush, wash it and dry it, and get ready for the next step. All right, so what I'm going to do for the next step is I'm painting my sand. I'm going to be using my large brush. I'm going to be using black, brown, yellow, and white. And how I'm going to do this is I'm going to start at the bottom. I want my sand at the bottom to be the darkest to give us some nice dimension coming into this little secluded beach that we have. And then as I go towards my water, I want it to get lighter and lighter, but I don't necessarily want it to go white. So as I'm creeping towards my water, I am going to make sure that I have some brown and maybe a little yellow in my mixture. And the reason why I'm recommending a little bit of yellow is sometimes the brown and the white, when we're using them, they might end up being a little bit too pasty kind of looking. So if you add a tiny bit of yellow into it, it's going to give you more of that natural kind of beach sand look to it. So I'm going to start with a tiny bit of black. I don't need a lot at all. I know how dark the black or how much the black can take over, and a little bit of brown on my brush. I'm going to, while I'm at the bottom, I'm just going to kind of use this circular type brush stroke. I will most likely work my way into that crisscross brush stroke as I move towards that water. But right now I'm just kind of getting on this darker region with a little bit of almost like a scrubbing type of brush stroke. Now I'm going to start picking up, without washing my brush, a little bit of brown and a touch of white. I'm not, again, using much white to start because I want to keep this bottom area pretty darn dark. And then once I've got this on here, and I can tell that the majority of the black has worked its way off of my brush, now I'm going to pick up about equal parts of brown and white. And I'm going to start kind of using a combination of the crisscross that I used in the water and the little circles. I really just want it to have a lot of texture to it and to not look like it's one solid color. I want there to be some dimension in it, and I want there to be looking like there's little bumps in the sand. So by using these couple of different brush strokes and getting them to kind of intermingle with one another, that's going to give us a lot of textural elements to it. And then I am kind of keeping it still pretty dark down at the bottom, but as I'm working my way towards the ocean, I'm going to start to use a tiny bit of yellow, and a really tiny bit. I know how much vibrancy the yellow can add, so I just added just a teeny tiny bit, and you can see it's giving it a really nice, more of a golden kind of tan look, as opposed to just the muted brown and white. And I'm just bringing that towards the water area. And as I go towards the water area, I'm going to start to use more of that left to right type of brush stroke, and I'm using more white too, because I do want it to be a little bit lighter as it meets that water. I'll show you how to do some kind of improv little white caps as you go into the water in a second here, but I'm just trying to get this on here. And you can, if you want to, your waterway where it meets the beach doesn't have to be straight across. You can bring this up further on one side or the other. I'm actually going to start crisscrossing them over one another at this point. So what's going to happen is they're going to look like they're merging into one another. And if your water is still wet, even better. That's going to make it look like it's merging in even more. So you'll see as I go through this process, I'm kind of pulling some of my wet paint from down here and utilizing that, because I don't really need a lot of paint on my brush, but I did just add a little bit more. I feel like I want a little bit more on my brush, but I am going right into my water. So what's going to happen again is that's going to give you a really beautiful transition from the water into the sand, and it's going to make it look like they're overlapping one another. And you can bring some areas further into the water if you wanted to, so you can really play with the depth of your beach if you wanted it to be more, you know, going into the ocean even more than mine is. Feel free to do so. If you want areas that are just kind of meeting it, you can go ahead and do that as well. If you had an unevenness to it, just roll with it, let it happen, let it, you know, let it be uneven. And then what I'm going to do is, now that I've got my sand on here, I'm going to do some very simple, carefree little white caps in the ocean. So I'm just picking up a tiny bit of white paint while this is all kind of wet and talking to one another. I'm just maneuvering my brush like this, and I'm adding these little hints of little waves almost crashing into the sand a little bit. I'm not doing much. This just adds, again, another little element of dimension to it. You could really have this as crashing as you want and have as many as you want, but I'm just going to go for a little gentle look, because we're just going to be seeing, really, this will be the focal point in our entry to the water. And then once you've got that all done, we will be using our medium brush for the next step. And of course you can bring some into here, so you can put your large brush away, take out your medium brush, and get ready for the next step. All right, so what we're going to do for the next step is we're painting our chair. But before we do that, I do want to kind of forewarn you that you want to make sure that your canvas is dry. So, you know, you could take that extra long break if you'd like to, or you can find some kind of fanning method to get it done with, or you can do as I did and just whip out your blow dryer and get it dry that way. But whatever you've got to do to make sure that this portion of your canvas is dry, feel free to do so. So I'm going to be using my medium brush. The colors I'm using are black, brown, and white. And how I'm going to do this is I'm going to pre-mix myself like a medium to dark gray. So I'm going to take my brush, use a little bit of black, a little bit of brown, and a little bit of white, and just spin it together. I would say maybe almost equal parts of each. I think I want mine to be a little bit lighter than that. This is going to be the base coat that we're going to use for the back of the chair and the portion of the arm of the chair. So you can really think of it as a light colored chair in the shadows. So this will be the back side, so it'll end up being pretty darn dark. So this is about where I'm going with my gray color. And what I'm going to do, I'm having mine kind of representational of a Adirondack style wood chair, but yours could certainly be whatever kind of beach chair that you would like. So how I'm going to do this, I'm going to have a couple of slats of the back of the chair in through here. We're going to end up having a seat and an arm and some legs on it, and we'll also have a towel draped over it, which we'll do a first layer of the towel right now too. So how I'm going to do this is I'm going to come above my horizon line by maybe about 1/2 of an inch to an inch, and in from the left maybe about 1/2 of an inch to an inch, and just kind of start the top of this back of the chair. I think I want my gray a little lighter now that I see it on my canvas. I'm going to add a touch more white to mine. So I know that it's going to end up a little bit darker as it dries. So this is me altering my color on the fly so that looks a little bit better to me. So once I've got that there, that's going to be the top of one of the slats on the back of the chair. I just want to give you a starting and ending point for this so we have a good proportion here. So the bottom part of it is going to end up somewhere about here. So if this is about halfway up your canvas, this is maybe a little shy of 1/4 of the way up your canvas, and it's in maybe about 4 inches or so. So somewhere in through here. And then I'm going to connect these two with a line that's going to be, I would say, maybe 1/2 of an inch to 3/4 of an inch wide. Yours could certainly be wider than mine or more narrow than mine. Whatever you'd like yours to be is totally fine. I'm just getting it to curve at the top because that's the way that I see these chairs as being. So I'm just getting it on here. And again, it doesn't have to be a perfect coat, just something that makes your mind happy. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to do another one right next to it. So somewhere in through here, I'm going to put another one. It doesn't have to be at exactly the same height. And I'm going to attempt to leave a tiny bit of a gap in between the two. And I'm going to bring it down to the same point. So you could even just take from here and give yourself a horizontal line just to know where to stop. And I'm going to do this maybe about the same, almost the same width. So something like that. And then I'm going to go ahead and bring this down. I have a shaky hand, so I will often just brace myself, like brace my pinky or brace part of my hand on my canvas so I can get a semi-straight line or something that is not too wobbly looking. And I'm watching the neighboring, this slat right here, and I'm just kind of trying to go next to it, near it, leaving maybe I don't know, an eighth of an inch in between them. But you, of course, could leave as much space in between as you would like. And then I'm just going to make sure that the left-hand side, I'm bringing this to be just about as wide as that one. So again, I'm bringing it at a similar angle. And then we'll have a little gap in here that we'll have to put another slat. So it'll look like we are just seeing a portion of the chair. And a lot of this chair is going to be hidden with the flowers that we're going to be putting on later. So if it doesn't end up perfect, don't worry about it because you're going to be hiding a good portion of it. And then I'm just going to go ahead and make myself a third little slat coming in through here and just making sure that I've got it, if I can, just about as wide. And I'm just bringing mine around the side of my canvas, something like that. And again, they don't have to be perfect. If you like clean lines, you could always add a touch of water to your brush to get the edges a little bit cleaner. That'll give you a nice smoother brush stroke. But we're going to add a bit of a little highlight in between them as well in a little bit. So don't worry about that. So then what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring myself a leg down this bottom corner. So I'm just going to take from this right corner and bring it just right to the bottom left corner of my canvas. So this is going to represent the leg, the back leg of the chair. I am going to have a towel hanging over here, but I want my towel to be nice and light looking and not too dark. So I know that I would have difficulty coloring over my gray chair. So I'm going to actually skip the area where the towel is going to be for a minute. And I'm going to go to the right of here. I would say about 3 or 4 inches. So somewhere maybe as wide as this chair over to the right. So somewhere in this vicinity. I'm going to make myself a vertical line that's going to represent the leg of the chair. It's going to come up about to, I would say right in through here. And it's going to come down about halfway between here and the bottom of my canvas. So somewhere about here. And then I'm going to just make myself a vertical line that crosses or is right around where my beach area, my beach sand meets my water. So somewhere in this vicinity would be great. And then I'm going to quickly wash and dry my brush so I can put the base coat for my towel on. And then we'll work around that towel for a minute. So just washing and drying my medium brush. And I'm going to put white paint on it. My towel is going to be hanging over the arm. So the arm of the chair is going to be in through here. So I'm going to just put my towel top somewhere in through here. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to make myself a ripply line coming down the side, what'll be the side of my chair. And then I'm going to do the same thing over on the right side, which will have a similar kind of ripple to it. It doesn't have to be exactly the same ripple. This is a towel. It can kind of hang and fall whatever way you want it to. And then I'll just kind of kick it out at the bottom. And then I'm going to just paint this in white. And we will add some other colors to it in a little while, but I just wanted to get this on here, so my towel is going to be nice and of a nice brightness and look like it's a nice clean towel. Not that towels are that clean when you're at the beach, but then I'm also, while I have the white on my brush, I'm going to create a seat for my chair. So about halfway up, or I would say maybe between here and here, about half the distance to there, right about here is where I'm going to create the seat portion going across, and then this is going to be a diagonal line like this. So it's just going to be a couple of little slivers of white paint that I'm going to put in here. So I did a little kind of triangle right in through here, and then I'm going to color this part in with white paint as well. My seat is going to be very light because it's being seen by the sun that we're going to have, and I'm also going to put little slivers of my seat showing through the slats. So if you don't have a lot of space between your slats, that's okay. You can just, skip this part. But if you've got a little space through there, that's awesome. You can do that. And then I'm going to just wipe my brush off on my paper towel. You don't even have to wash it, and pick up some of that gray paint that we had. And then I'm going to put the side of the seat. This will give it that three-dimensional look to it. So I just painting a little bit below where I put the seat. I'm using this gray paint in through here, and then I just need to put the arm of the chair on. So the arm of the chair is going to come right from here, and it's going to come right out the back of my towel. So I can just kind of put my little area coming out the back of my towel and just make it connect with the top of my arm, and you can have it extend, or the leg. You can have it extend past the leg. That's going to make it look even more like it has dimension to it. But you just want to make sure that it kind of visually connects with your little piece on the other side. And again, this doesn't have to be a perfect coat. We've got some details that we'll be putting on it later. But once you've got your chair with the base coat for your towel on here, we are going to be using our large brush for the next step. So you can put your medium brush away, take out your large brush, and get ready for the next step. All right, so what we're going to do for the next step is we're doing the first step to our flowers. So I was going to say first layer, but I'm not quite sure how many layers we're going to do. So I'm just going to say the first step. So this is going to be kind of the foundation for them, which is going to look a little bit like wild grass, but it's also going to have the stems to the flowers. So the flowers that I'm attempting to represent are called goldenrod flowers. So they've got these beautiful, like golden, for lack of a better term, this really rich, yellowy, metallic kind of color to them with sparkles and stuff all over them. But in the base of them is green. So there's lots of green along the stem to them. So we're going to put that on there first, and then we'll build the flowery part afterwards. So I also want this to look like down at the bottom where there's maybe some wild grass as well. So we're going to start down at the bottom. I'm having a lot on the right-hand side. I'm going to have just a little bit on this left-hand side, just kind of dancing a little bit behind the chair, but not much. So I'm going to start with green and black on my brush. I will only use black very limited down at the bottom. Then I'm going to go into green and brown. And then by the time I get to the top, I'm going to be using mostly green on my brush. So here we go. I'm going to start with a little bit of black and green, and not much. I don't need much. And I want to kind of control what's happening to my brush. So when I go to pick up paint, I will a lot of times squish my brush on the side of my palette, because with these bristle brushes, sometimes the bristles kind of splay out a little bit, and this helps me to keep them in control. And some of these pieces I'm going to want on the slender side, so I will be using the slender side of my brush as opposed to the wide side of my brush. So I'm going to start over here, and I'm just kind of pulling up some real dark pieces. I want there to be an entryway to my beach as well, so I'm not going to put a lot down in this center area. And then I'm just kind of bringing this up a little bit in through here. I'm going to do the same thing over here on the left side, just bringing a little bit of that darkness, the black and the green up. And I didn't reload my brush throughout that whole process. Now I'm not going to wash my brush, but I'm going to reload it with brown and green. So this way it's going to start to transition into the lighter pieces. I do want to have a few kind of distinct longer stalks of sorts for these flowers over here on the right hand side. So I'm going to start to maybe put those stems in place. And I don't necessarily want them to be exactly going in the same direction. So I'll bend one this way, another one I'll bend the other way. And that way it will give me a really natural look to it. I'm going to have a big one coming up in through here. And then I think I'm going to have a nice huge one kind of coming up towards the top of the canvas in through there. And now I'm just going to pick up some green paint and just kind of start to add a little bit more fullness at the bottom. After I get this fullness at the bottom, I'm going to start to utilize these stalks. For these particular type of flowers, they also have little offshoots. So they come off of the center and then they kind of shoot out almost like a palm frond of sorts coming out of that main stalk, for lack of a better terminology, or stem. So as I go through these, coming off of the main part, I'm going to bring out these other ones that kind of lean over and have a little bit of movement to them, a little bit more movement to them. So I've got my main stalk and then I kind of bring it out. So again, you could be using at this point just green or green and brown, wherever your comfort zone is. You will be utilizing a lot of bright colors once we do add the flower portion to it. But at this point, if yours ends up a little bit darker than mine or not exactly the same color family, or you're like, oh no, it's a little bit too much, don't worry about it. You'll be able to make it more delicate as we add those flowers later. I just want to make sure that I've got enough volume on this underside so that way when I do go to add them, yeah, that's looking good. And I also kind of probably should have forewarned you about this. I'm going to have footsteps. So I want the footsteps to kind of be able to travel pretty darn far down the path. So I didn't want to cover that up too much. I'm going to add some of this green and brown over here, but not too much. I'm not going to cover too much of my chair. I just want the little hint of it down in this bottom corner, just so we can have some good balance on the painting. And then we are going to be utilizing our small brush for the next step. So once you've got your main coat for your flowers on here, you can put your large brush away, take out your small brush, and get ready for the next step. All right, so what we're going to do for the next step is we're putting our sun in place. So again, you can imagine this to be a sunset or a sunrise. Whatever you'd like is totally fine. They can kind of sometimes look pretty similar to one another, but there's never two exactly alike. So when yours turns out different than mine, don't worry. It's yours, it's not mine. So how I'm going to do this is I'm going to use my small brush. I'll be using mostly white with a little bit of yellow and a little bit of pink. And they could turn into this nice peachy color. They could be independent, and one can be really yellow, one can be really pink. You can really have some fun with it. I might, as I move into the water, because we're going to do the sun and its reflection, as I move into the water, I might end up using a little bit of blue as well. But if I do, I'll let you know. So I'm going to start with a little bit of white on my brush. I want my sun to be somewhere between the arm and the center of my canvas. So I'm going to go to the left of the center of my canvas a little bit, but not quite as far left as the arm of my chair. And I'm going to create a little crescent of sorts. Your sun doesn't have to be already dropped below the horizon line. You can have yours could be in the sky if you want to, just close to the horizon, whatever you want is totally fine. And my trick when I do this is I never use a lot of paint. So that way it dries really fast for me as I am creating this illusion of sorts. Once I have the white, every time I use a color, I can go right into the water and use that same color on my brush in the reflection. So I know that the reflection of the sun is meant to look right at the viewer. However, I'm picturing myself to be in this chair, so I'm going to have my reflection going right towards the chair. So I'm going to use that white on my brush. It's going to be pretty wide up at the top where it's meeting the sun, and then it's going to go down and get skinnier and skinnier as it's coming towards the viewer that was in the chair at one point. And I'm going to just make it a little bit more narrow as it comes along. So now I still have white on my brush. I'm going to pick up white and a little bit of yellow. And the yellow that I'm using is really powerful. So I'm going to start to add a little bit of a glow around the edges of my sun. And I'm just kind of overlapping them a little bit so they look like they are merging into one another, and then I just kind of pull that yellow and white out to the left and the right of my sun. So this way it travels into the atmosphere, and you can have it going however far out you want. You could even put some extra little clouds in the sky above it if you wanted there to be a little bit more atmospheric, dimension to it. And like I did with the sun, I'm just picking up a little bit of yellow and white and doing a similar type of reflection in the water. I think I need a little bit more white so it ends up kind of breaking through that blue that's there. And then, of course, the reflection doesn't have to be exactly the same as what's going on in the sky, but you do want it to have a similar kind of color formation or pattern to it. The ocean water will make these colors look different than they do in the sky, which means that they could be lighter or darker or have a little bit different of a hue to them. But you want the yellow on the, wherever you put the yellow up here, you want it down in the water as well, in a similar pattern formation. And then I'm just going to go ahead and pull some of that as it's reflecting towards my chair, something like that. Now, without washing my brush, I'm picking up a little bit of pink and white. And this is going to add more of those beautiful summer sunset kind of colors. You could take the pink and mix it with the orange or with the yellow, and that would provide you with like a peachy type look. And I think I'm going to show you what I mean in a second here. Let me just kind of mimic what I just did up into down into the water so I can have my similar color pattern in the water. And then I've got it going on over in through here. So I know I'm going to want to use this peach color later, so I'll show it to you now. So I'm going to mix a little bit of yellow, pink, and white, and I can come up with this beautiful peach color, which we accidentally got to in our sky when we were doing the original layer, just because the colors were wet and they were blending together. But this to me is this very natural, vibrant type of sunset, sunrise type of tone. So I'm just going to add some of it into my sky. You can even cross it over into your sun a little bit, and that will indicate that there's little clouds drifting in front of the sun. So whatever you feel is visually appealing to you, and then I just kind of try and mimic that color pattern in that water. And then we are going to be utilizing, we're going to use the same brush for the next step. So feel free to continue to make beautiful tweaks to your water. If you feel like you want more sparkles, add a little bit more, come back with a tiny bit more white down that center of the water. And then you'll want to wash and dry this small brush and get ready for the next step. All right, so what we're going to do for the next step is we're finishing our beach chair. I'm going to be using my small brush. I will be using white, brown, and black. And if I need to go into my original gray, I will let you know, but I think I might just use white, brown, and black. So how I'm going to do this is I'm going to be putting a highlight on the top of my chair, a highlight on the front, shadows on the back, and little highlights going down the inside edge of there. and any other shadows I need to do. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to first load my brush with a little bit of white and brown at the same time. I'm going to use this as my highlight color. I'm going to be starting with the top of my arm in through here, and I'm just adding a little bit of a highlight right at the top of that chair. So I didn't do the side because I want it to look three-dimensional. So I just added a little bit towards the top, and if you feel like you need a little bit more lightness towards the front, feel free to do so. And if it's see-through in through here, like I can see my the arm of it is through there, so that means I need a little bit more of that gray paint just in through here just to cover that part. So you can certainly tap into your original gray if there's any areas that look unfinished. Then I'm going to utilize that white and brown again to do a highlight down the right side edge of my slats. So again, I have white and brown on my brush at the same time. And really, again, I'm just trying to make this look a little bit three-dimensional. So I'm going to start up at the top and then just come down the right-hand side with a little sliver of the light color. So this is, again, brown and white on my brush at the same time. And for me, I want this to look like it's, you know, just an old weathered beach chair that's, you know, gone through many storms in its day. So it doesn't have to be perfectly straight. I like to use the brown in it to make it look a little bit more on the natural side, and every time I reload the brush, I reload it with white and brown, so that way I have a little bit of an assortment of the colors. And then I'll go ahead and do the same thing on this side. I'm trying to keep my hand out of the way and make a straight line at the same time, so hopefully you guys are getting the gist of this, that I'm just kind of doing my light line down the side. And this is a great step that you could utilize to straighten or, you know, tweak your lines as much as you need to. And I'm going to bring it all the way down to what would be the back, or this back bar. Oops, I didn't do that on this side though. Let's bring it all the way down to here. Make sure I keep it consistent on all of them. So just bring it all the way down to here. And then I'm going to go ahead and I have this last little sliver over here that I'm going to do. Just making sure, and I've got some little flower branches and stuff in my way. I'm just going to paint right through those because I know I'm going to have a lot of flowers that I'll be able to, or you can just wipe it off, that will be disguising that anyways. I'm going to do a little highlight down the front of the leg of the chair. So again, just the brown and white, and again, I'm going to do it similar to here, where I'm just going to be doing a little sliver of it. So something like this, and again, this is going to give it that three-dimensional look to it, and the multiple colors on my brush at the same time, again, are providing that really natural look to it. And this one's going to go all the way down to the ground. I don't feel that I would need one here because my towel would be casting a shadow. I don't feel like I would need one here, the highlight that is, but now I want to put some shadows on it. So my shadows are going to be with black and brown, and they're going to be on the underside or the back side of any pieces that I want. So I'm going to have a little bit of a shadow underneath this arm, and then I can just pull it down. And if your gray is darker than mine, you might need a little bit more black on your brush. Like I feel like I might want to have a little bit more black just so you can see that shadow better. You want to, there's no point in putting something on there if you can't see it. So I just make sure I have enough in through there. And then I think I would have a little bit of a shadow down at the bottom of here as well. I'm going to make it gradually go up into the leg itself. So I'm dipping my brush. I started with the black and brown. Now I just dipped it in the original gray paint just so I can have some sort of transition from it being pretty dark at the bottom and then just kind of naturally getting a little bit lighter as it comes up to the base. You might have a little shadow underneath these the seat of the chair, depending on what kind of chair you've made yourself. So if you feel like you'd have one there, that'd be fine. I know I'd have a little bit of one behind my towel. So I'm going to put a little bit of a shadow behind my towel there. and right in through here, being cast on the arm of the chair, something like that. I think I need the top of the chair in through here or something like that. Maybe this is just casting it upon the whole thing. And I'm going to have a little bit on the back side of the chair, but let me just get a little bit of a highlight up on the top of this one piece of the chair. There we go. So back in through here, this is kind of the leg of the chair, and I think the side of it, I'm going to have just a little bit of a shadow or a little bit darker in through there, but definitely back in through here I'd have just a tiny bit maybe underneath and in between here. So this back piece is just a little bit darker than those, but it doesn't have to be. And then if you felt that you needed any more tweaking to these back pieces, you could certainly, if you wanted them to look a little bit more like wood, you could use your original gray plus a little bit of brown, or if you wanted them lighter or darker, now's the time to go ahead and tweak them if you wanted to. And then we will be using the same brush. You could also, another little modification you could do, if you wanted your seat to not look like a cushion, you could certainly put like brown little slats in it or something if you wanted to, but I'm gonna just have mine look a little bit like a cushion. And then I'm gonna be utilizing the same brush for the next step. Oh, I need a little shadow in my sand. Hold on, let me just put a little bit of brown and black shadow in my sand for my leg like that, and maybe a little underneath my towel like that. All right, and then I'm gonna wash and dry this brush and get ready for the next step. All right, so what we're gonna do for the next step is we're finishing our towel and we're putting ourselves a couple of cute flip-flops just sitting on the sand next to the chair. I'm gonna be using my small brush. The colors that I'm gonna be using are my gray from my chair, white, brown, and that peach color that we made for the sunset. So that was a combination of pink, yellow, and white. So how I'm gonna do this is I'm gonna give my towel a little bit of dimension first with a little bit of that gray. Then I'm gonna put my base coat of my flip-flops on, and then I'm gonna come back for some detail on them. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna start with white and a touch of gray on my brush at the same time. And what this is gonna do is I'm gonna add a little bit of like a fabric ripple in my towel. So if it comes down like this, I might have it kind of dipping in through here, and then maybe dipping in down here. So the gray with the white is going to provide me with a little bit darker of a shade. And I think I want my towel to kind of flip up at the end. So I'm going to leave that that little corner part at the end just flipping up, so that will make it look nice and natural. And then I'm just rubbing this so it blends in with the lighter white. If you need to, just add a bit more white to your brush just to get it to blend in. And then I'm going to add a little bit of that shadowy kind of area, maybe somewhere in through here. And again, this is just so it makes it look like there's a little bit of movement to my towel. And now I'm just picking up white just to make sure that that little bit of a darker area kind of blends in well. And again, I'm not using a lot of paint on my brush. I'm just getting it so I have a little bit darker areas that are going to make it look like it dips in, and then the lighter areas are going to make that look like it pops out. So that's just an easy way to give yourself a three-dimensional illusion to a piece of fabric, is just by making the parts that dip in look a little bit darker and the parts that are popping out look a little bit brighter. And then once I've got this on here, while that's kind of settling and drying, I'm going to go do a base coat for my flip-flops. So I'm just going to use brown paint. I just wiped my brush off on my paper towel. I picked up some brown paint. I'm going to have one kind of laying like in over here. I guess I do have a little bit of white left on my brush, which is totally okay. So this one I'm going to have kind of laying on the side, and you can make your flip-flops as big or as small as you want, totally up to you. I think I do need a little bit of white so you guys can kind of see what I'm doing here. There we go. So I'm using brown and white as my base coat, And your flip-flops can certainly be whatever shape that you would like them to be. I'm just going for some kind of traditional ones. And then I think I'm going to have another one in through here. And of course, I'm having mine in different angles, like maybe one of them's kind of sticking in the sand or standing up a little bit behind the other one, but you could certainly have fun with your placement. And then now that I've got those kind of just marked where I want them to mark, and I've got a base coat on there, I'm going to wash and dry my little brush, and I'm going to add my stripes on my blanket or on my towel. So you could certainly, of course, have yours whatever color you want. If you wanted purple, you could mix your pink and your blue and white. I'm going to go for this peachy color, which I made before, but I just want to make sure that I have enough of it. So I'm just kind of making a little bit more in through here. And I am going to be doing my stripes are going to be in the same kind of ripple formation that I had for the edge of my towel. So I'm just using my peach color, and I'm just going to kind of go along the edge of it. So, and leaving little white stripes in between. So I've got this going on in through here. I'm just kind of following my little ripple in through there. And if you have, if your paint is a little see-through, can't forget this little underside here. Got to get that little one onto there. If your paint is a little see-through, you'll catch the shadow from underneath here through your paint. You could even water down your colored paint that you're using. If you water it down, it'll be a little see-through, which will mean that it will take on that highlight and shadow that we put underneath. So I'm going to go ahead and just kind of continue to add my little stripes, and in some places they may be cinched up a bit and they might not be equally spaced apart. They might look a little bit, you know, closer to each other in certain spots, or they might have been crimpled up a little bit with one another. So you can certainly have fun with that. And where my little towel flips up, I'm just putting those marks a little bit to the right, and that's going to provide me with a cute little illusion in through there. And then over here, maybe this is where part of my towel is going to be crimpled a little bit. Put this little spot here, and then I have my little edge over here. And of course, because being the girl that I am, I'm going to have my flip-flops matching my blanket. So my flip-flops, or my towel, so my flip-flops are going to be of the same kind of pink color or peachy color. So once I've got my towel done, and of course you can sit here and fiddle with it and make sure that your edges are nice and perfect. So I'm just going to use that same peach color to add little accents to my flip-flops. So I'm going to just add a little bit of the peach color on the base of it. Maybe these are those like little wicker wooden flip-flops that have some like almost like little wood mesh kind of texture to them. And now I'm going to add my peach with a little bit of white to add the thong part of it. So the thong part of it is going to be, you know, where your toes go in, and then maybe this kind of goes back like this and back like this, and then maybe this one is kind of looking from the side, so the toe part's going to be here, and maybe that goes like that, and this one maybe goes like that. And then I'm going to pick up a little bit of brown to give myself, just making sure that I have a little shadow underneath, maybe a little brown and black, just to make sure that there's a little tiny shadow in that sand, so you can see that there is, that they're almost three-dimensional a bit, maybe a little bit in through here. So you can, once you've got them on there, you can certainly sit and just fiddle with them and maybe add a little bit more dimension to them. Maybe this one's got a little bit more in through here. And you can see it just by the way that I'm doing mine. I like to kind of add the dimension as I go, because sometimes I think, oh, I want it to be really light, and then I put it on there. It's like, maybe I want it to be a little darker. So you can certainly, during these processes, just tweak it, you know, bring it to wherever your eye is comfortable. I know that the sun is over there, so maybe I have a little bit more of a highlight on the tip of the flip-flop, and I think that's all I'm going to do with them. Just giving you this subtle illusion that we've got a cute pair of flip-flops in through here. And then we are going to be using our large brush for the next step. So once you've got your flip-flops and your towel all nice and done, you can put your small brush away, take out your large brush, and get ready for the next step. All right, so what we're going to do for the next step is we're doing the base coat of the actual flower part of the goldenrod. So of the golden yellow flower part, we're doing the base coat. So I'm going to use my large bristle brush. The colors that I'm using, I'm actually going to be making a custom color, which I'm going to refer to as the gold color because they are golden rods. So what I'm going to do is, this is where I'm headed. How I got there was I used some yellow, pink, and white, which gives me that peachy color that we started with over here. And I'm also adding brown to it. So this way, it ends up being a really nice neutral type of gold color. And if you don't get the perfect color on the first try, like this is a little bit too light for me, so in order to get it there, I would add more pink and more yellow. I've got some green creeping into my mixture over here, but that's what I would do. I would just kind of keep tweaking it. It doesn't have to be perfect. It could be more on the pinker side. It could be more on the yellow side. Whatever is tickling your fancy, and oh, there we go. I've got it pretty darn close now. So once I've got it in the color area that I want, what I'm going to be doing is I will be taking my brush and I am kind of squishing it on the side of my palette. Let's just take this over here and blend it all together. There we go. This works out. So I'm just squishing it on my palette so my bristles are kind of in control, because I don't want this to be a big dotted, the whole thing taken over by this golden color. I really want to have some sort of resemblance of the original type of flower. So again, I'm going to be kind of following along with what I had for my roadmap of sorts, and keeping in mind that I don't want to cover up all the green. So I've got my color in through here. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to kind of start utilizing the tip or the skinnier part of this brush to start to form these the flower type portion of it. So these kind of they do have different variations of goldenrods, but the one that I'm seeing in my head, they have these long rod type flowers. I don't know what a better word for it than that. They are golden rods. They look like rods, so they're long and they're slender, but they're fluffy at the same time. And gravity takes over, so they kind of bend over a little bit. But you don't just want to go to the left and to the right. You can also go do some up the middle and have some crossing over. So you want to give it some good, a variety of directions as you're doing this, but you still, again, want to maintain some of that green in there as well. So I'm not going hog wild on this. I am definitely leaving a lot of that green visible. And I do know that we're going to be putting a really vibrant, beautiful, yellowish, golden color on top of this. This is adding is going to help to add that three-dimensional element to the entire formation of these flowers. So again, I'm just kind of following along with where I put some of those original green areas. And you can even add some of this where you didn't have some of the green areas. You can certainly improv if you feel like you want to add some extra spots here and there. And you can, of course, extend it further than those green areas. That's just meant to look like the foliage in the center coming off the stem. And of course, I'm going to come up and do these ones in through here. You can have some poking out from the side. You can have some strategically placed right on top of your horizon line if your horizon line didn't come out exactly as you had wanted it to be. And I'm going to continue to just kind of add these. Maybe I've got a couple coming off the top of my canvas, which is provides that beautiful illusion as well. And then I'm just going to kind of finish up on this side, and then I'm going to go do a couple over on my left hand side behind my my chair here. So again, just a little bit of it on my brush, and I've got the greenery started down here, which again I'm going to utilize and make sure that I still have it represented as being there. And then I'm going to have maybe a couple kind of just coming off the side of my canvas up, you know, strategically in front of some of these pieces of my chair, but I don't want to make it too consistent. So I'm just going to have a couple of pieces here and there, just giving it the illusion that there's something over in this vicinity, maybe a little bit in through here, but I still want to keep my pathway open so my beach goer has a place to walk. And then we're going to use our small brush for the next step. So once you get this done, you can put your large brush away, take out your small brush, and get ready for the next step. All right, so what we're going to do for the next step is we're painting our footprints in the sand. So I'm going to use my small brush, and I'm going to be primarily using brown and white, but if I feel I need to go into black or yellow just to make things blend a little bit, I will, and I will let you know about it, but mostly brown and white. So how I'm going to do this is I'm going to put my footprints into place with my small brush and just brown paint, and then I'm going to come back through and add little highlights and shadows to get them to look like they belong within the sand and are pretty natural looking. So I want there to be a dimensional element to this painting, so I'm going to have the footprints bigger where they're near the chair, and they're going to get really small as they go off into the distance. I have, if this is the seat of my chair, my person would be sitting in it, its feet, the person's feet would be right about, you know, in this vicinity, and I'm going to have my person kind of getting off the chair, walking over here, and then going to go down the hill and disappear off in, ooh, I might even be able to put a couple through there. Sorry, I get excited sometimes. Sorry, my brain just got all excited about footsteps going off into the distance. It's amazing what happens in this little cranium of mine. So I'm gonna start with brown paint, my small brush, and you don't need a lot of paint, like just a teeny tiny bit. We're just giving the essence, and we want it to blend in with the sand itself. So I'm actually going to put one right about here. So I am just using the brown paint, and I'm going to just give myself a darker area with that brown. I'm going to have another one in through here, and you don't have to worry about them being of anything perfect. I'm just wiggling my brush. I see that that's the size of the foot. So this one in through here shouldn't be much bigger than that. Maybe a little bit bigger because the sand has moved out a bit, but doesn't have to be much. And then my person is taking footsteps. So if I do, this is the left, this is the right, I've got a left one somewhere in through here. And the footsteps will end up getting closer together and smaller as they go off into the distance. So this one's going pretty, a little bit smaller. And if you make it too big by accident, don't worry about it. We can correct that when we are doing the little highlights. And I want it to go down the hill now, if there is a hill, or off into the distance. So something like this. Right now I'm not even reloading my brush, because I just have a teeny tiny bit on my brush right now, and they're going way far off into the distance. And maybe this is where I was getting excited. I get to put little tiny footsteps off in through here, and oh, I get to put some over here. Not that anybody's going to notice them except for you guys now, but you know, just those little things make me happy. So that looks pretty cool. So I'm not going to wash my brush. I'm just picking up a teeny bit of white paint. So what I'm going to do, in my head, when I walk through the sand, my feet push the sand forward, which means I would have a little bit of a accumulation of thicker sand in the front part of each foot. This one you can't see because it's hidden behind that. This one you can. So I would put a little bit of white paint in the front of the footstep, and then you can just rub it out into the sand. So what happens is you're giving the illusion that when somebody stuck their foot in there, it just pushed that sand and made a little bit of a pile in front of it. So I'm going to keep doing that to all of these, and you might not get it perfect on the first try, but it's a fun thing to attempt. And what I'm going to do is I'm just kind of putting the white paint on there right now, and I'm going to come back with maybe the sand color just to make sure that all the areas around the footprints make sense and they blend in with the neighboring sand. And of course, these little ones off in the distance that made me so happy, nobody's going to notice that they're there anyway, so I'm not going to spend too much time on them. And then once I've got that in there and making sure that you can actually see it, because there's no sense in putting it there if you can't see it. So I'm just kind of elevating this white a little bit more. Then what you can do is you can do anything else you need to around that sand. So if like I feel like that's a big darker area in through there, I can just pick up my white and brown at the same time, and if I needed to, a little yellow too, and just kind of get this area to blend in around. And your sand doesn't have to be super smooth sand. I mean, this is meant to look like a nice secluded beach where you've got all different, you know, things happening with your flowers and stuff. So your sand doesn't have to look perfect. Maybe you want to have some rocks in your beach area. You can really just kind of manipulate it into whatever way that you want to. And if your sand was darker than mine and the brown didn't elevate your footprints enough, you can certainly pick up a teeny tiny bit of black paint, not a lot, but a teeny tiny bit, and you could put a little bit more of a shadow in where the toes of your footprint would be, and that would make it just a little bit deeper in the sand and give it a little bit more of that three-dimensional illusion. That would be if your sand was dark and you needed to elevate it a little bit more. And then once you've got all of your beautiful little footprints in here and you've done any little modifications to your sand that you may want to, we are going to be utilizing our large brush for the next step. So you can put your small brush away, take out your large brush, and get ready for the next step. All right, so what I'm going to be doing for the next step is I'm finishing my flowers. I'm going to be using my large brush, and I'm mostly going to be using yellow and white, but I may also dip into that gold color that we created, and if I feel I want to do any little space fillers, I might go into the green a little bit as well. But if I do those, I'll let you know. So I'm going to be using a similar painting technique, which is just the dotting of sorts, but I want this to look very dimensional. So when I'm doing it, I'm not gonna say, oh, I need to do it exactly on this one. I will just maybe do a little bit on the top and maybe look a little messy so you can still see some of that color. And my main objective is to get some of the flowers that are facing the sun to be the lightest. So that's when I'll pop in a little bit of white on my brush so it's a lot lighter on those little tips that are leaning towards the sun. So I'm going to start with my yellow and a bit of white on my brush. I'm going to start wherever I want to, but I'm going to start down in the bottom. And as I do this, I'm not pushing really hard. I'm just using the tip of my brush to just kind of get the illusion of kind of these little speckle pieces on top of the first go around that we did. And then I'm going to I'm watching where I put those original flowers so that again can give me more of a roadmap. But again, I'm not going full on into painting over that entire area. And then as I come towards the top or towards the sun, I'm going to end up using a little bit more white. But right now I'm just kind of popping in some of these brighter areas. And again, you don't have to stay exactly on 100% the original area that you did. You can certainly extend this yellow part a little bit further. That's going to give you more of that dimensional element. You can certainly overlap it or even go in a different direction a little bit if you want to. Totally fine. That golden color that we created was really just intended to be the base coat and the underneath colors for it. So I am making sure it still is there, but just adding more of this beautiful bright color as I go, and trying not to overdo it. I don't want it to be all just yellow, yellow, yellow. I definitely want there to be some of that original color in there. So that's why I'm going slower, and I'm not pressing too hard. I'm not going as fast as I did the first go around, because now I want to concentrate a little bit more and make sure that I've got the vibrancy and the control, and putting the flowers right where I want them. And as I'm moving towards this area, that's going to be really pretty important in my opinion. I'm using my white and my yellow. I'm going to add a little bit more white to get more of these beautiful pieces, just to kind of pop out and show that they're being illuminated by the sun setting or rising, whatever you've decided to have yours be. And then I'm just going to kind of add some little tips in through here, making sure that I've got a good representation, and again making sure that everywhere kind of crosses over, and making it all looking like it makes sense. And of course, I'm going to put a little bit up in through here, so you can see that color kind of cascading down from the top. You could use some of that peach color too, if when you're coming towards this sun area, if you wanted to pick up some of the peach that you used for your beach or for your towel, you could certainly do that. But I'm just kind of getting my little ends on here, making sure that they've got some good movement, and you can see that shape to the flowers. Might come back in a minute after I do my ones on the left to add little space fillers, but I'm going to give this a second to kind of cook a little bit and get, visually see if it's going to end up where I want it by the time that it dries. But while it's doing that, I'm going to move over to here and just add some of my vibrant yellow, maybe a little bit of that original golden color, just so it looks maybe a little bit darker over on this side, because this side might be a little bit more in the shadows as opposed to that the side on the right. But I definitely still want to have the illusion of these beautiful bright yellow highlights on top, and then of course the ones that are leaning more towards the sun, making sure that I've got a bit of that white to tell the story of the shape of them and give the viewer the information of them having some good dimension to them. And I think, I'm really digging this, but I think I might add a little bit more, little bit of green and yellow. So I'm going to just put a little bit of green and yellow on my brush and give myself a couple more pieces of this greenery in through here, just to fill some spaces and hide my footsteps that I put down towards the bottom. But this is just, I was looking at it and I'm going, I think I wanted just a little bit more volume to it, and just adding these bits of the, that green color or some natural elements to it can help to elevate it. And of course, if you wanted to do anything else to it, you can keep tweaking it as much as you want. But we do have one tiny little step left to go, and it's going to be with our small brush. So once you've got your beautiful flowers all nice and highlighted and created, and you've got as much volume on them as you want, you can put your large brush away, take out your small brush. These are the steps that I really have a tough time stopping, but I will. So take out your small brush and get ready for the next step. All right, so we are on to the final step. This is the final step of every painting, which is to sign it. So I usually sign mine in the bottom left or the bottom right corner. I'm going to use my small brush. I'm going to be using black paint. I think I'm just going to kind of sign mine over here in the bottom left corner. I do mine with my initials, but you could certainly do yours with your first name or the date or a symbol or whatever you'd like to. It's your identifying mark. You can certainly make it into whatever you'd like it to be. And that is going to conclude this painting. I hope you enjoyed the process. I hope you painted yourself a beautiful beach scenery, and I look forward to painting and sipping with you again sometime.